you. Oh yeah, I should just anyway. I'm just going to say, I just graduated from Michaelis at UCT. I just graduated in May this year, so I'm very fresh out of university. You guys probably saw my installation downstairs. There's like large female figures. And the one that that's mine. They were part of an installation that I did for my graduation. It was the final year of experience. They're all made out of recycled unitized. And for that particular body of work, I explored a Mexican woman in history. Her name was Riëtte Drevin, and that's how she was most commonly known. It's a very interesting woman. She lived in the 1500s in Mexico during the time of the Spanish conquest. And she was a Maya woman living under the Aztecs as a slave. But she's going to have her little kids as a gift from the Aztec king. She was very good at it. She was very adept at diplomacy, and she picked up Spanish very quickly. She came to be interpreter and came to be a very integral part of operations in Mexico like the world. She was also the first sort of person of noble descent. She was a chief's daughter. She was the first noble person to be baptized by the Spanish in the world. She also had a son right under the bed. I don't know if you guys saw the child's portrait. His name was Martin Cortez, and he was he was born at a very catastrophic moment of history when the Aztec Empire fell into one hand. They sort of new age of the age of colonialism in America. So he's kind of incredibly Diesel, which is like the ancestor of like the new age. So the figures that you saw downstairs were all interpretations of Islamic chairs. Like on the one hand, she was cast out as a traitor for helping the sort of come to power in her spirit. But she was credited with providing them with vital information that they didn't want to do. So on the one hand, she's seen as a cloaked figure represented by Riëtte. She kind of became associated with that in 1935. She was kind of this urban legend who murdered her own children in order to free herself from her husband. And it was said that before the Spanish invaded Newtown in 1521, that she was this phantom that walked in the streets at night, sort of the next state of the chest, fate of the race. So, on the other hand, she was also became associated, especially if you work with cover sprinters, became associated with virgin bodies, like seen as like the next religion, because of the fact that it was very debated whether Martin Cortez was the result of a rape. So a lot of the people sort of at that time kind of consolidated, like the only way that they could really make sense of that was to sort of, they came to view her as a deity, as a savior for having invested her fate with the hands of the colonials, instead of sort of just accepting foreign. She made that choice to put the cost of her fate into it, and that's why we kind of see her as a savior of the country. So I also mainly focused on that story because to get this to South Africa. I'm talking a lot now about Mexico. You're probably wondering, what does this have to do with that? Because there was a woman who lived in the 1600s as well at the Cape of Good Hope, and it was Eva Katoa. There's a meeting that was going to do with Riëtte Drevin. It was very interesting. She was a Khoisan woman who came to serve as an interpreter to Johannesburg, and she had the exact same history. She was shunned by her own people for participating in colonial relations. And on the other hand, she was also shunned by the colonials after the death of her colonial husband. She also had mixed-race children, which was sort of the first baptized Khoisan people at the table. She was known as Eva by the Dutch, Eva from Riëtte. She's worth a Google, she's very interesting. And then I kind of moved towards this figure after having looked at the colonial sort of the origins of the way in which the feminine is perceived, how women perceive themselves, and how that perception has been changing over the last 500 years. I've come to take on a more contemporary viewpoint with this figure because the story behind this work is it is like a woman being a very common-household object, kind of perceived as a possession, as something that you completely take for granted. But on the other hand, she's the support of the family. Like something like a chair wasn't there, there would be a critical fulcrum point missing in the whole structure, which is why she's taking on the form of a chair. And the title of this work is Pedestal, and the subtitle is That's Always Ugly, Death to Tyrants. So it's a Latin quote that was feminine, like the feminine is perceived, how women perceive themselves, and how that perception has been changing over the last 500 years. I've come to take on a more contemporary viewpoint with this figure because the story behind this work is it is like a woman being a very common household object, kind of perceived as a possession, as something that you completely take for granted. But on the other hand, she's the support of the family. Like something like a chair wasn't there, there would be a critical fulcrum point missing in the whole structure, which is why she's taking on the form of a chair. And the title of this work is Pedestal, and the subtitle is That's Always Ugly, Death to Tyrants. So it's a Latin quote that was apparently shouted before Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. It was Sic semper evelum mortem tenens is the Latin, and that was what was shouted before Lincoln was shot. So it's kind of like a connection because he was sort of credited with emancipation and giving women sort of more credit in society. And she's resting sort of here, like she's looking very serene, she's resting kind of as if she's almost waiting for the tyrant to fall. She's kind of done her job, she's laid her foundation, and she's waiting for the result. I kind of like we have reached a point with all that colonial heroes, the last 500 years, the vilification, the deification of women, we've kind of reached a point where we are resting, we are accepting, we are seeing change. Okay. If anyone has any questions, please ask me. I was asked how I title my work. It's usually before, because I'm very interested in the theoretical aspects, so I read a lot. My titles mostly come from literature. So it's very deeply embedded in the writings of Octavio Paz, who was an Mexican essayist, and Carlos Fuentes as well. And sort of I think that the words that people use to describe things are very, very pungent, and I always kind of draw my titles from that. Things that have been said in the past, sort of being reinterpreted. That's why I also use the rubber to recycle, because I feel like I'm recycling contemporary bits of history, and that just sort of slots in with my conceptual development. Anyone else have any questions?